One of the biggest topics heading into the election day is mail-in ballots, as you know, Sean. It's a major issue that could cause some tampering in November. And just last week, the New York Post reported over 80,000 mail-in ballots were disqualified in the New York City primary. That's 21% of the total number of ballots counted. And it's not just New York City. The same thing is happening all across the country like we're seeing. We've also seen this in states like Virginia, Nevada, California, just to name a few. Well, to discuss this, let's bring in our company radio show host Joe Pags and attorney and author David Limbaugh. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good to be here. All
right, well, I feel like this is a lose-lose situation for states here. The situation I was talking about in New York, a large percentage of these were actually disqualified because they didn't have postage time, the time stamp that says when you actually put it in the mail. So either states put postage on it and pay for people, and then they get disqualified because the post office isn't marking them, even though they say they do, or they don't pay for postage and then they risk people not putting in the mail or having to pay themselves. Joe, what's the solution here?
Well, it sounds like a poll tax if I have to pay for anything when it comes to voting. The solution is if I can go to the grocery store and socially distance, if I can go and protest among 30,000 people, and that's not a problem. If I can go and wait in Home Depot and they've got little footsteps where I can put my feet, I can go and vote. I don't understand why I can't go and personally vote, why I have to put it in the mail, and why is it that one side of the aisle is pushing so hard for this to happen? 80,000 in New York. The Heritage Foundation has an incredible story about 1,200 or so cases of fraud that we know about from mail-in balloting. Real Clear Politics did a deal where millions of ballots are just lost over the past 10 years. Why are we even having this discussion? Why is the left so hell-bent on us not going and voting and having somebody knock on the door and maybe collect a ballot or send me 13 ballots to my house and I can fill them all out for, I guess, Joe Biden? I don't understand the controversy. It's strange to me.
Yeah, David, what do you think is the solution here?
Well, to totally negate it, except in absentee ballots where you have to qualify and where you have to go through the rigorous procedures in order to ensure ballot integrity. Joe's question is ultimately rhetorical. The Democrats want it because they want voter fraud. They want to cheat. They've always cheated. And I don't care if I sound like a fanatic saying that. Why would the Republicans oppose it? There would be no reason. We know they're going to try to cheat. And every time it is happening, this is ripe for voter intimidation. Why do you think we even have these procedures at ballots where you can't electioneer, where you can't try to lobby people at the election place, at the voting place? You can do that at home. Plus, there's all kinds of examples of people using this to intimidate. You can, in the various states, you can turn in 100 or 200 at a time. You don't have to be the actual voter to turn it in. This is really a scary thing. It's just like the Democrats don't want voter ID because they think people are too stupid to present their ID. No, they don't think that. What they think is they want other people fraudulently to be able to vote. We just want to ensure the integrity of the process.
So, you know, the funny thing, David, is I always say this to folks. Democrats walk around and go, there's no fraud, there's no fraud. Well, there is fraud. But do you lock your door at night? Of course you do. It's not because you've been broken into. It's because you want to prevent someone from breaking into. And so part of protecting the vote doesn't wait until it gets stolen once. It makes sure that it never happens in the first place. The other thing that I think is fascinating about this whole scenario, and follow me on this theory, Joe Pags, and tell me what you think. The Democrats and the media went all in on mail-in vote. Everybody needs to cast a vote. It's so safe. It's much safer. And then what they did is they shifted over the last 72 hours and started to say, uh-oh, the post office may not be able to deliver the votes in time. Why? Here's why I think so. I believe it's because they're setting the predicate that if Joe Biden loses, they can say, that's because you didn't count all the votes that were cast after Election Day, and we have to go back and count all of these votes that got missed. They're setting up the problem right now and the predicate thereof before it happens, because when Joe Biden loses, they want to be able to say that's why.
You're 100% right. And that's actually the reason they brought up mail-in balloting to begin with. They want to have a way to have him win through fraud. And if that still doesn't work, you're right. What's the fallback? The post office really messed up. Post office didn't get it done. We can't have the election result the day of the election or the day after. It's going to take months to really go back and recount. And somebody's going to back up like they did in Minnesota when Al Franken was elected. And they're going to open their trunk of their car and say, look at the thousands of votes I found. Isn't it crazy? So, yeah, I think you're right. They're checking every mark, which is mail-in balloting, voter harvesting, which is great. If he still doesn't win, we're going to figure out a way to get him in the office the way that we couldn't do for Hillary Clinton. They learned a lot in 16, Sean, and the bottom line is we're not going to allow this guy to continue as the president if we have a say in it. That's why we're having this conversation. They shouldn't have a say in it. We, the voters, should have the say in it, and we should do it in person with an ID, God forbid.
You know,
David Limbaugh, let me just throw this out at you, though. I'm sorry, but Lindsay, you brought this up. Lindsay's scenario was the post office doesn't postmark many of the ballots that don't have an actual stamp on them if it's prepaid return, right? So all of a sudden, 10 o'clock at night, you realize Trump's going to win. You get a bunch of people to cast their ballot, put them in the mailbox, and the Dems say, oh, you got to count these ballots, even though you don't know when they were cast.
Yeah, we've seen the hanging chads and the boxes that are found in Democrat trunks. We can't trust this. We know that a party that rejects the rule of law and law and order and cops can't be relied on to uphold the integrity of the election process. You know, right? The media is denying this narrative and presenting their own narrative. They deny this bipartisan commission by Jimmy Carter found that mail-in ballots remain the largest source of voter fraud. The New York Times in 2012 said mail-in votes are the least likely to be counted and the most likely to be compromised or contested. Do a Google search on voter fraud and on mail-in voter fraud. You can't find anything unless you put in a conservative site like Newsmax or The Federalist. If you don't attach that, you won't find any stories that support the actual truth of the conservative side of it.
Yes, it's crazy. And the unfortunate part is, as you mentioned, David, the left is trying to act like the right doesn't want people to have the right to vote by mail, but it's called absentee voting. That's what it is. We do want people to have the opportunity to take their health, and that should be important too, but it's called absentee voting. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having you. Appreciate your insights.
Thanks a lot.
You.
All right, well, a lot of hot button topics discussed today in our show. Sean and I will give you our take after the break.